Originally this was going to be a 10 things I hate love about Entity Core, but I have a tendency to talk a lot, and I realized I would probably go over time. So I cut that in half, and I realized not a lot of fluff was lost. Most of the information, whenever you go, if you are looking at Entity Core, Entity Framework, most of the information that you find online is going to kind of support what I go through. Naturally, they're not just my own observations. Reddit has an entire thread dedicated to hating on Entity Core. But don't listen to it. It's not all right. So who am I? What am I? My name is Daniel Ashcraft. I work in full stack JavaScript. It's okay, Clayton. No comment. I also work, play in ASP.NET Core, which means Entity Core. I've been developing websites and applications for a little over 3 years, freelance, contract, in-house. And I am the admin for the free CodeCamp user group here in OKC. I won't do a plug, but if you show up Sundays at 2 o'clock p.m., you can learn some stuff. I am lazy. I am your average programmer. I don't know any programmer, for the most part, that won't take advantage of tools or write their own tooling if they have an opportunity. It's kind of like what we do. Here's my Twitter and Medium, so at Diavash and Fire. If you like satire, you're good to go. You will find lots of material. Here's my GitHub, Ashcraft. Wake up. Don't fall asleep on me. I see you there in the back. All right? I don't have a marker to throw at you, but if I hear snoring, I'll tap the mic. Originally, I was going to have everybody do exercises, but I wanted you guys to be mildly annoyed with me, not hate me. So I just put a slide in there. So Entity Core, keep it simple. What is Entity Framework? Entity Framework is Microsoft's ORM. Anybody here work with ORMs? SQL Server people. Awesome! Yay! Kinda. It allows you to work with your SQL database and other databases in general using .NET objects. In Visual Studios, it has neat little tools like scaffolding, migrations, mini relational mapping. Entity Core is a lightweight version of Entity Framework. It's not a full Entity Framework like what was originally intended in Visual Studios. It is meant to be cross-platform, so it runs on my Mac for real developers. And it's supposed to be new and improved. I think we'll go into some of the new and improved stuff, and pros and cons. Pros. Entity Core allows me to write models and generate tables using C#. I wrote a little caveat in there. I'm not touching the DB, but I can. Okay, SQL people, don't look down your noses at me. I can write SQL code, but if I can stay in one environment, I'll choose to do so. Purists. With Entity Core, I can manage migrations fairly easily. If you ever do any kind of .NET stuff, they have command line tools now, which work great in CMD and command prompt or in Bash. I use .NET quite often now because I'm really into the new Web API 2.0, and ASP.NET is finally not making me angry, and Angular 4, so it works well. Yep. Correct. So yes, you're working kind of through an interface that's abstracted from you. It does the magic. You just write very, very small scripts, and it does the thing. Which the big benefit of it in that sense would be that it does generate those relationships for you. You don't have to go and build them by hand in SSMS. I know you guys know SSMS. You guys are probably masters, and I'm a noob. It's okay. Auto magical code generally doesn't suck. Most of the time, about 90% of the time, you're not going to have to edit any of the code that it creates for you. That is not always true, though. About 10% of the time, you do have to go and kind of force it to do what you want it to do, which, at least in Entity Core, pros and cons. All right. It doesn't try to do too much. Scaffolding and EF has never made me happy. If any of you have ever started ASP.NET 5, or if you work in an older environment, 3, and you right-click, you scaffold, it generates all your CRUD for you, and then you go and you delete all of it, because a lot of it you don't need or don't want. I despise that. If you're not really having a hand, process for the most part, and you don't understand what it's doing in the background, you can get lost in errors. And so for me, coming from a full-stack JavaScript background with no IDE, I like to write things by hand and know what's actually going on. Entity Core doesn't do that, so it doesn't scaffold. It plays nicely with visual code, which is a big deal, because I do use visual code. And somebody out there in Twitch land is going to comment because I was formerly a Sublime, no packages guy. I've now fully switched over. All my projects are now in visual code. And I'm going to get hate mail after this telling me. No, I doubt it. No.
What is visual code?
Visual Code is a lightweight IDE. It's very similar to, I say Sublime, but it also has run times and run environments in there. So if you want to run in .NET Core, or you want to pick a target framework or a target environment you want to run it in, you can. Where Sublime is very, very basic. Sublime is basically just a text editor. It also does IntelliSense. IntelliSense is magic. It's really what kind of sold me on visual code. IntelliSense with Angular 4, if you do any kind of front-end work, I know front-end, bad, that's like evil, but it's okay. If you do any kind of front-end work, IntelliSense is very new. So with Angular 4, you get that, and it's awesome. Thank you. Visual. Oh, sweet. So, great questions. Someone else is going to actually do a talk on visual code. That's a whole talk on it, which it's great, yeah. Get it, it's worth it. I actually have the Visual Studios for Mac preview. It's kind of iffy. There are several major bugs that keep me from using it all the time. Cons, here comes the good stuff. Now, caveat, a lot of this is going to be backed with data, and you go find it on the interwebs and on Reddit and stuff like that. Some of this is going to be my personal opinion. My personal opinion is, as a JavaScript developer, may not mean too much to somebody who's a C# developer. So take it with a grain of salt. It's very slow. If you use Entity Core and kind of an Entity framework for the most part, if I don't shake the table, maybe. There we go, maybe. See, Entity Core people.
This is the dance portion of the night?
Yeah. I can't beatbox though. That would be good. Yeah? Let's see if that works. Okay, is that running? No glitchy? Okay. Maybe? We'll give it a try? Okay. Slow. Yay! Everybody, round of applause for tech support. Unplug it and plug it back in works. It's really slow for any aggregate functions. There is, once again, an entire Reddit thread that goes through and actually dives into the stack trace on why it's so slow. It's far above and beyond my head, but it's something like a factor of 8 times as slow as just writing the standard SQL query if you're doing any kind of group by or any aggregate functions in general.
Quick question on that.
Yes?
You're not saying Entity Core's IDE is slow in that it's saying that the SQL it generates for a group by is going to be not optimal.
Correct. Yeah, the query, and whenever I was going through and I was digging through the data and they were justifying why they were saying it's something like a factor of 8 times as slow, they were going through and they were showing that it was actually doing nested for loops on an iQueryable, and it was just like, and it was like, ta-da! It took 12,000 milliseconds for something like 100 rows, which is not very big. They were saying in Hibernate, which is a different ORM, is almost like a third of the time frame, so significantly slower, but only for aggregate functions. Everything else is generally okay. I haven't used it for any.
Like if you use Entity Core, can you then go in and do like your aggregate yourself?
You can. So you can inject raw SQL code through Entity Core, and it works exactly as intended. There's not an abstraction in that way. It's direct.
When I was working with Entity Framework,
to the,
then you didn't have to have raw SQL in your code base. You used entity framework like it was meant to be used, but then it would just query the views rather than.
yep, and I've used views as well, and they work as intended as well, which as intended is always good.
Sure. Kind of from the Rails world. Is this just active record, basically, with a different language, or?
No.
Okay, that's why, what?
In fact,
What was the question?
he was asking, coming from a Rails world, this seems a lot like active record. And he was asking, is this active record? And the answer is no. In fact, Microsoft, and you can go and dig through the documentation and the pull requests, they've gone far, far away from active record. And they kind of ditched a lot of the original code base that they had, like Link. They wrote, oh boy, tangents. I told you guys, I chopped this up because I go on tangents, right? So in my digging, I was like, well, why is the group by clause slow? You know, is it the link, right? Is it link syntax? Is something in link causing it to? Well, they ditched all of the code that they wrote for entity 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And when they got to 6 and core, they used a third-party library called Relink. They ditched every bit of it. They don't even support it. So, ta-da! Thanks, Microsoft.
It's not even using a group by, it's
It is. They were saying it's not a group by. Well, it's a group by followed by a join or something like that. And once again, they have like the picture of the stack trace, and it's. With that being said, another small con: the .NET objects, in my experience, have not been consistent. I want a specific object. If I'm going to query something and you have an object called an iQueryable, please give me an iQueryable. If I change it and you give me something else that doesn't cast to whatever I need, it hurts, right? Because I have to do a lot of workarounds. Well, ta-da! If you do a general, give me everything where xid equals something, works as intended. It will give you a list. You can cast a list to JSON. It'll pass to JSON. Looks great. If you say, give me everything where x equals ID, but only give me the columns ID and username, bam, wrong. You're going to have a bad day. No listy for you. You have to do a lot of workarounds for that because it casts it to a different type of .NET object that does not have a .toList function. So there are some specific caveats with the way it casts it to objects that can cause you some pain. What I have done is I have used iQueryable when possible, or I will just use my little cookie cutter cast a list that I've made with my cast to give me my JSON list. Oh, by the way, everything I'm passing is JSON because JavaScript, right? REST API, yeah. Look how many issues are open. This has only been open since fall. So I was digging through GitHub, and I was like, why haven't they worked on maybe improving some of the speed or issues that they have? I think whenever I was looking at the average lines of code committed, it was something like the average developer pushes about 3 lines of code per commit. 3 lines of code per commit. 528 issues. 3 lines of code per commit. What I've kind of deduced, may just be me, is that they only maintain Entity Core part-time. So what they want to be the newest, latest, and greatest is only going to have part-time support. Which, I guess if you're open source and you like contributing, now that they allow you to do that, it's good. It gives you lots of opportunity to improve. So go and submit your code. They could use the help. Cons continued. Need another slide. No automated mapping of many-to-many relationships. How many of you here have a database that doesn't have a many-to-many relationship? Oh man, you have to manually code those. You have to tell Entity Framework exactly where your relationships are going to lie. In the old version with Visual Studios, when you scaffold things and you actually did that, those many-to-many relationships were mapped for you. They haven't brought that over to Entity Core yet. So you have to do that by hand. You have to type it. The good news is it's not terribly difficult and the syntax makes sense, but you can have a DB context that's several hundred lines long because you've just got all your mini relationships hard-coded. You have to explicitly override defaults on every column if you have different defaults. For some of you, it may not be a big deal, but for others that maybe have particular code by rules from your organization where they require certain defaults, this can be a pain, right? Because previously, you can kind of set these after the fact in your getters and setters, whatever it may be. Now you have to declare them per column name. Don't have a choice. That's it. That's what you get to work with. So once again, it abstracts a lot of the things that you would like to have abstracted. Some of the things you would like to have abstracted aren't abstracted. But as somebody who's lazy, yes, ma'am?
So on the having to go in and override the columns, that's something you said comes out to go in and SSIS. So how hard is it to do that? Are you having to go in every column, like do 5 steps, or is there like a big grid and you just click one after the other after the other?
That's the literal syntax right there. So what I've done is, and that was actually one that I had for varchar. Some people use 1080. I don't know why I chose 900. I'm being different, I guess. I just copy and pasted this down where I needed it. But this is the syntax you have to use where you have your column name, whatever it's going to be, in the brackets type name equals, and then you declare the cast, the type. But you have to do that.
Are they on one screen?
It's per model. So whenever you model it out, it's going to be on your model.
Okay.
The bads, right? With that being said, for the wrap up, I don't hate it too much. It still does a lot of the things I want it to do, and it doesn't do a lot of things I don't want it to do. I personally like to tell my tooling what to do as opposed to it thinking for me for the most part. So it fits what I need for the smaller projects. There is a huge debate going on right now whether or not it is production ready. I am going to avoid the claim and not give you an opinion, but you can draw your own conclusions based on the performance issues I brought up. If performance is a major factor to you, I probably wouldn't go for it. Who here doesn't have performance as an issue working with big databases? Anyways, with that being said, Entity Core, I do have a love-hate relationship with it once again, but I would rather it do too little than too much, right? When it does too much, it's a lot harder to kind of rip out the code. It's much more tightly ingrained, and you get a lot more errors that are harder to debug. When it does less and you kind of dictate what more you want it to do, it's a little bit easier. So I'm still going to use it for smaller projects, and for bigger projects, I may look at other ORMs. There are other ones like Hibernate that has much better support, and maybe not part-time developers. But with that being said, yeah, Entity Core, 5 things, not 10. I love hate, right? Thank you, guys.